Welcome after the break. We're in for the second panel. We've got Agnieszka Różanowska, who is the head of the Global Conservation sector, Tomasz Zemła, who is the head of one of the projects that are part of Global Conservation Plan, Kamil Będkowski, expert in documentation, and Agnieszka Wieliczko, who's responsible for conservation and maintenance of the camp. Welcome, and the floor goes to you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Agnieszka Tanistra-Różanowska, and I'll briefly discuss what is the Global Conservation Plan in our museum, how we implement it, and what makes carrying it out, how it makes stand us out from other plans, other museums. This global plan was a document that was a completed idea since 2009. We call that global document our master plan. That's when it was formalized. Let's go back now to 2003 to understand where the idea for such a plan originated from. In 2003, as has been said, the museum had new professional conservation studios. Setting them up made it possible, first of all, to gather a team of highly qualified art conservators of various fields of expertise who now could, in their works, define the extant threats to the museum elements, discuss the factors that impacted their degradation, and discuss and set the objective for conservation. They also developed standards for all conservation processes and also for the documentation that the museum later are developed, also thanks to this master plan. That's how we arrive at 2009, when all those activities allowed eliciting the systematic plan of work based on the condition or degree of survival, defined the priorities and long-term protection scope, and defined also the groups of objects that call for multifaceted conservation. These include both movable and immovable assets. And another factor that makes this stand out is also the financing of the museum. The creation, definition of the objects, its problems, and also the estimation of the uh, needs made us capable of applying for funds for its completion. There is an endowment fund for our conservation works and for description of everything we have here. This work is financed from the interest that is paid from that capital. That interest and the management of endowment fund is the work of Auschwitz-Birkenau Foundation. And the museum has the comfort to do planning and visiting those works long-term perspective of 25 to 30 years, and the work is uh, financed from Auschwitz-Birkenau precisely to carry out the museum's plans. As has been said, the museum spends over 30 million zloty a year to protect that. The money from the interest from the endowment fund exceeds 20 million zloty a year. That comes every year according to the needs defined by the museum. That's what financing looks like. Now, what does this plan concern? It actually concerns most of the objects that are protected by the museum. We preserve archaeological objects, archives, museum objects. We modernize the way they are preserved. We conserve wooden and masonry barracks. We try to improve the water conditions in part of the camp, mostly Birkenau. We protect historical greens, ruins of the crematoria and gas chambers, and we protect the section D1, and we do prevention, so preventive protection of this section before we enter complex conservation works. It's important that all our work is project work. We define our goals, the objects that we want to undergo long-term conservation. We define some time perspective, and then we start a project that we focus on. And we focus on that whole. So complexity of all the works, very carefully planned, and a particular meticulousness is characteristic of what we do. Now, the scopes of individual works. Conservation also extends to archaeological sites, objects from archaeological research, and to the works that accompany our works in the ground. We can see that those objects are now differently stored. We adjust to each of them our conservation activity. Conservation works are extended also to museum archives. You can see here letters from the inmates from the time when the camp was in operation, before, during, and after conservation. One of the projects carried out during conservation, conservation of textiles. This is a striped pajama after conservation. Thanks to the funds from the endowment fund, we could also create such conditions for storage of textiles that they could survive as long as possible, which really means proper climatic conditions and proper storage. We also are the wall paintings conserved as well as the historic greens that will be in detail in one of the following presentations in the panel. Complex works on wooden barracks, all the parts, including even flue ducts in the chimneys. The complexity here is high. All the elements undergo conservation, but also construction works. We show you the gas chambers, the crematoria. Here, those scopes were absolutely interpenetrating. An important aspect of this global plan is regulation of water tables. We renovate those ditches and the historical culverts. We show how we make inventories of those historical culverts, and we try to be as non-invasive as possible. These are the results of those works that made it possible for us to see that some of those ditches, for example, had stone bottoms, and those elements had by now been missing. A very large scope in carrying out this plan is the uh, successive retention of the masonry barracks in Brzezinka. That's another thing that makes our work stand out. We conduct renovation throughout the year, throughout the lifetime of a given project, which on average runs from 2.5 to 4 years, depending on how we carry out works. They can be commissioned to uh, eternal external partners. Now we have those halls, they let us carry out work, and that's one of the characteristic mm, elements of stable financing of this plan. You can see how complex these works are, both in the residential barracks and also in the kitchens where these undergo conservation outside this unit. What is another distinctive factor? Yes, we run works under the tents, and that's become a particular standard of our work. Well, we are independent, we are financially independent to a degree at least, and we can run these works continuously. We also have our own team, highly interdisciplinary. You can see archaeologists accompanying all our earthenworks at the stage of planning, also planning all the renovation. You can sometimes find relics, sometimes immovable, as in the previous photo, sometimes movable, and we conserve those as well. In our team, we have craftsmen working at the museum who are a part of the team working here, also conservation experts for the works of art, working on all the elements of the barracks and so forth. We have a large team documenting our work. Here you can see our colleagues who do laser scanning, and extremely important is the fact that we have engineer, we have technicians, also art conservators, and they plan all the preparations and together make decisions concerning how to manage specific problems and how we're going to cope with those.
What is important here, all our works are very carefully documented and reported at all stages, which distinguishes our actions because we use all the contemporary available methods, and we want the people, the teams that will come after will know more, but this will be discussed in detail during the next presentation by Mr. Będkowski and Mr. Tomasz Zemła. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tomasz Zemła, and I would like to discuss how Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum uses modern technologies for the protection and preservation of historical objects. In our everyday work, we use a lot of diverse devices. One of them is drone, equipped with cameras, thanks to which we can document the condition of the area and the objects that we are looking after, because the photographs, the films can be made at a specific time moment, and these photographs can be used for identifying the changes which are present. With the use of drone, we also document the works that we perform. So, for example, we have a documentation of the moment of erection at tent hall with conservation works. Also, we can compare photographs. The photographs that you saw previously, these were average photographs, and the nows that you saw, these are orthophoto plans that are metric photographs. And you can see the long shadows given by the objects. So this is an
w zimie, kiedy widzimy, że na naszych obiektach na
you can
terenie
document it also at a different point of time. For example, here it is in winter, noontime in winter. We see a global approach with the program of the entire area of Auschwitz-Birkenau, but this has some defect because with such a grand area of 190 meters, it is absolutely impossible to show the detail because the photograph would occupy too much space and would render future use more difficult. As we can see, this is a ditch behind the sauna building, and we can give up this larger area which is of some interest for us at some point. If you do not need information for the entire ditch, but only its corner, you can document only some selected area. Thanks to that, you have the access to smaller details. Some other device that we are using, it is the laser scanner. The laser scanner is a small device, about 30 centimeters, which allows for the use of a laser beam, and it shows some photograph, and thanks to that, this has the vertical surface, whereas the scanner is uses in horizontal one. That is why it can document the area. So we place the scanner on a tripod and we can operate it manually, but we can also operate it remotely So there is a tablet here with an app
Skaner w ten sposób
servicing the scanner, and it can be started or stopped, and the progress of work can be monitored. The effect is a cloud of points. So this point cloud contains millions of points reflecting the geometry of the scaled objects. And this is the vertical cross section, thanks to which you can have a look inside the building. Within the post-processing works, you can perform drawings or orthophoto plans. So, for example, this is the conservation of one of the barracks within the shades of gray, and this has also a camera. So, if a series of photographs
czarno-białą
is
elewację.
performed, then this black and white facade can be compared to the real situation of the building. This is the laser scanning. It is the panorama of 360 degrees. And once it is written down once it is saved in a file, you can see the element of the roofing, and you can also see the entrance door to the barrack, and also the same door that is the closure of the image. Another product that can be used, which is the effect of work with the point cloud, it is the strain map, and you can see the strains, for example, with the walls or floors of the buildings, which are the most
Widoczne też tutaj na tym rysunku. Możemy w tych miejscach,
removed from the most damaged objects, which are distinguished by the largest deviation from the vertical line. But this can be used with one device only. It is an unmanned aerial system consisting of a large drone, a laser scanner. We do not have such a device, but we used it for the documentation works in Auschwitz II camp, and this leads to a cloud of measurements, point cloud, and this can be classified for the data interpretation within the point cloud, and it has the markings of the objects and the buildings. And in pink, you can see the ruins. Yellow is the forests, and the green is other areas. Also, we can perform the height analysis. This is the map of the height of the area, and it has the lowest areas as well. And this is the northwestern direction. Also, we use this for current conservation works and current intervention works. So we can see, for example, a small red narrow area, and that is why we performed analysis in order to see where we can see the navy blue areas, and here we can see the white rectangle that is the barrack. Another technology, it is the beam that employs the 3D model. It is the building information modeling, but it has to be interconnected with other information concerning the entire building, because we are dealing with the existing objects, and this is the point cloud, and this has new references because it has some areas. So we have the
fotogrametrycznych.
or
Takie tekstury nakładamy na
photo plans, which are done photogrammetrically, and this is made on foundations and on the ceilings and the floors. So we
Tutaj widzicie
have
Państwo
4 types. So for example, we have the model of the barrack. So this is the ruins of the washing room. So this can be also processed, that is with the cross section at any place, and we are modeling the with the accuracy up to 2 centimeters. So this is the model, and thanks to that model, we also have the access to
po wykonawcy, czyli po przeprowadzeniu prac konserwacyjnych.
elements that have already been covered with. So this can be done also as the post-production work. So everything that is covered with the floors, but thanks to this post-production model, we can get the elements about the information about the covered elements, which can also be used for works planning. And this is the model of the barrack in the protection work. Please observe the historic floor. And when we are using the model, we can visualize some works, so we can see the works of conservation, and we can see that the supports disappeared because the wall was stabilized, and this was made by some replacement wall, replacement floor. That is why the visitors can move in a safe way. So what is important is the information. So all this is the information dealing with a specific element of the barrack, and we had also the floor, the roof with specific information, and we can see what is important from the specific point of view. We can also make visualization showing the condition of preservation and post-production, that is the post-conservation condition. But what is important here, it is not only the geometry or visualization, but also specific information concerning historic walls. An example of an integration of data, it is the integration of laser scanning and beam. It is the point cloud with beam models, and it is the point cloud for B1 section, and it is also integrated with beam models plus the visible elements. So if you make a closer look, we can see the tent and a fragment of B1 section. So you can see the back of the building construction and also the containers, which helps us with the future works and with specific place and location. That is why I can find the model of a barrack. So we can move it, we can have a close-up until the view that we are interested in is made closer. If I remove the visibility of the door, I can also turn it and see what I'm interested in. An important thing for us is the management. That is why we are at the stage of the data management system. And also it is a pilot project concerning B1 section, because we do not have, we have 45 brick barracks introduced there. And what is important for the view is the map, but we can also change it trying to see the objects which we are interested in against the background of the satellite view. And this is the filter with the object. So the barracks are filtered through their historic function, and additionally it can be added. So this is the largest group of the objects. For each of these 45 buildings, there is information. So there is the point cloud, and this is the introduction of documents. For each object, we have the global location and also on the territory of B1. So, for example, the number of the building, its historic function, and whether a specific building is made available or not. So this is what the work with the system looks like. And on the left-hand side, it is the projection which are compatible with one another. So if on the left-hand side, we move on the specific building, it is automatized. Another example of data integration is the model, which shows us that we can see the three types of data integrated in one place. So we can rotate it in order to get information of the objects that we are interested in. So we can also have a look at the details so that we could see what it looks like against the wall. And if we are interested, we can do it with a specific box that can be cut so that the elements of the barrack does not obscure the view. And thanks to that, we can see exactly in which place of a building we are located. What is of utmost importance for us is the reflection of the elements of the barrack. So it was filtered after the components. For each wall, there is some specific information. So apart from it, we can see in the barrack what is important, the information concerning the properties of specific wall. So if a specific function was created with the entire constellation information, what is important is that the management system has its own communication. So that is why it's located there, and it is a global approach from the general part to the specific part, and we can move the specific one that is of some interest for us, and for the specific pillar that is important for us. And the last thing from the object that is used, it is the system of geographic information. So here we can see the objects, the buildings in the former Auschwitz camp, but here in the background we can see the orthophoto plan from 1997. That is the photograph, the aerial photograph, and we can see here the information concerning the barracks, the ruins, the camp ditches, and also throughputs. And also there is the contemporary orthophoto plan. So there is nothing against the contemporary photograph to be replaced with another one. So this data can be switched off, and the system can be saturated with the information concerning historic water lines, water pipes. There are also drainage systems which are marked with the dotted lines, and the yellow rectangles are the areas where we carried out our work. So it's our staff is guaranteed a simple access to the data. It can be obtained from the point of view of an internet browser, and it was 2D
dane BIMowe.
map, but also we can add some models to it. So, for example, the tent, the view of the tent can be switched off and the data can be added to it. So, for example, the data can apply to various types of water or sewage systems.
Detalu, nie tylko
We
do
can also get to the details of a building, not only of buildings as such, but also its components. So, for example, there is a selected roof beam with information concerning this specifically selected
cyfrowe, które państwo
beam. So all the digital technologies which we use are their objective is to
dzięki temu
gather data, to collect data, and to
decyzje i w ten sposób
analyze them. So our decisions can be easier, and the buildings and objects can be protected. Thank you very much for your attention.